Welcome to the richness of our lives. I'm Mary Scott, and this is where we celebrate the wisdom, courage, and stories that shape us. Every 2 weeks, I sit down with entrepreneurs, coaches, and remarkable people who've walked through fire and come out transformed. This isn't just about success. It's about the richness of the human experience. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's dive deep. Welcome, everyone, to the Richness of Our Lives podcast. I'm your host, Mary Scott, and a huge welcome to all of our listeners, and thank you for your continuing watching of this podcast. It's very exciting. Today, I have a woman who is an absolute wealth of wisdom. You're going to love her. She's a life coach. She's an inspirational speaker. She's a podcast host. She is also an author, and you're in for a treat. Please welcome Patrice Baker. Hello, Patrice.
Thank you, Mary. I am grateful to be here.
It's lovely to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm great.
That's lovely. And I think what we might start is in the early days when you were just a little girl at age 9, something quite significant happened in your life that really set you up in some ways for maybe how you're living your life today. Would you like to share with us about that?
Yes, I would. We had moved recently to San Diego from Little Rock, Arkansas, where I was born. And my dad he opted to go through an operation so he could pass a physical to find work. And the operation was completed, but he died shortly after. So my journey began as, you know how we tell ourselves stories. Well, my story was I was abandoned. I was insecure, and I was pretty angry. You know, my dad was the central part of my life, and uh, in those days, they didn't talk about it. They didn't know you needed conversation as children. And so we didn't have a conversation about what happened, what came after that. And it really shaped my relationship, not only with myself, but with men in general.
And how old were you again?
I was 9. Yeah.
So impressionable. And, you make a very good point, don't you, that back then
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't talked about.
No, it wasn't.
Some children that had the passing of the parents were actually removed and brought back when it was all, and
Mm-hmm.
it's horrifying when I think about that. And it made sense to me. That little girl would have felt terribly abandoned, angry,
Yes.
yes. So,
Yep.
so what did you do with all this?
I kind of stuck it in the gut area. I held any emotion that came my way that added to the trauma. I couldn't deal with it. So I sucked it in, I pushed it aside, I just kept going. And, it didn't know how to express it, didn't know, couldn't put the words to how I was feeling. And as a result, I would eventually tell people, no matter what age I look like, I'm 3 years old inside.
Yes, yes.
So, I'm operating as a 2 or 3 year old, not an adult person, and emotionally, I'll say. And yeah, it was such a lesson on, parents' different outlooks and viewpoints that they come into the marriage with, into the relationship, and when they have children. And I experienced quite a bit of that, differences in my mom and dad. And one of them greatly was that no one talked to me. They didn't know this little girl needed communication, even at that age.
So that's quite isolating, isn't it? No one talked to
Yeah.
me. And
Yeah.
obviously, this is when we formulate some of our very strong beliefs that we then manifest, an enormous
Right.
amount of things that we would prefer not to sometimes.
exactly.
And so, how did that, you mentioned before, particularly men, how did that impact relationships with men as you became an adult?
I think there was a certain fear. There was a certain they were beyond, they were more than me kind of thing. I couldn't reach that. Um, I had my dad was with me and he was taken away, so that was it. You don't know what you don't know. And but it made me feel a big loss. I knew something was missing in my heart and my spirit. I knew that a large piece of my growth and development was being affected. Yeah.
Was it like a, it's something missing? Is it like a yearning? Is that a good word when you say
Ah,
there's something
yes.
missing? Is that a good word to describe that?
It is a very good word because every time there's an opportunity, you want something to happen and you can't do it in the way it needs to. Um, there's no training, no, way of that I was taught, to interact with men. And with my mom, uh, her interaction was, kind of quiet. There was no overt interaction. She didn't marry again. And so, yeah, so it was very isolating. I loved watching Westerns, so the Lone Ranger. So I just called myself, I was a Lone Ranger, you know, and
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
moved forward. But inside, I felt all alone.
How did you keep moving forward? What was it that helped you pursue what you wanted to do?
Well, when my dad died, my mom was left with four children, 18 months to 9 years old, I being the oldest. And as a girl, I think I just took on that role of protecting the family, of thinking I was protecting the family. Of just keeping everything on an even keel. I got my training as a mediator there. I actually am a trained mediator, but I became a mediator, because I could advocate for my siblings without any personal involvement. I didn't care what the outcome was. So I learned to do that. So I was I was the person that tried to keep everything together, you know, the
Was that
fixer, I guess.
like the peacemaker?
Absolutely. Yes, yes.
Quite a burden, isn't it, for a little girl, 9 years, just lost her dad, and then suddenly the eldest, and I'm imagining that you had to take quite a bit of control.
Yeah, well, that brought the anger, so because I didn't have control because remember I was only 9, and as I grew, I didn't have a final say. I couldn't determine the outcome of things. And over time, that was my desire. That began me on a search to help other people. So if I can't help here, I'm going to help outside of me. And my whole journey was about just helping other people. I can help you. I can fix it. I have a different perspective, a different way of looking at things. So I can always offer that. And people were interested in that. They said, I didn't think of it that way. And I'm so good. Yeah. So we got something going. It was all outside, though. It wasn't coming back into me.
No.
Yeah.
What did you do with your anger? How did that manifest in your world?
Well, the funny thing is people remember my smile. I smiled a lot. I was probably gritting my teeth. I didn't know it was the picture didn't look at all like what was going on. And that was the issue. If they can see something, maybe they can respond. But what they saw was this big old smile and this little girl, looking around and very curious about what was going on. And my mother was not quite as curious. So, don't run, if I'm going to run out, they're going to pull me back, so that wasn't a good thing. So if that isn't good, what is? And that began my search. Let me find what's good for me. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you were curious. I love
Yes,
curiosity, and I know you do too. It's important.
absolutely. Yeah. And I was told I was adventurous too. Yeah. So,
Lovely. Nice string to your bow. Curious and
yes,
adventurous.
and
Yes,
adventurous.
lovely. So where did that take you? Your curiosity.
Well, it took me to uh, when I made up my mind. as I was interacting, and I didn't date long, but I was married twice. So I'll just put it that way. And so I had a particular role in the home, and I wasn't as curious um, as a wife, but I kind of adhered to the rules. I kind of had, if I'm going to control this, I'm going to do it the way I think I ought to do it. So I worked, come home and cooked, I did the laundry, I did everything.
Everything.
And I guess it was a matter of trying to control my whole environment, you know. And so as I grew into adulthood and began to find interest in things, well, my curiosity took me to the US Open twice on a tour from San Diego, once by myself and once with my cousin. So I'm realizing that's where my adventuresome and curiosity played out, not so much where people could see it in my everyday life. Um, so I think that's where the curiosity and I was always learning. I had more self-help books than a library. So yeah, I love to read. I love to, find and get information, put things together. And I actually went to school to be a psychiatrist, yeah. And I could not, when we started talking about Sigmund Freud, I just couldn't get over Freud. So it didn't work. I couldn't get through that. It's just,
I can relate to a little bit of that.
yeah, okay. So it's like,
And so what did you do instead?
well, I followed a track after, and I didn't think much about, once I graduated from high school, I went to college a little bit, but I'd had my daughter, and I'd had her in my final year of high school, and I knew I had to find a job to support her, and so the Urban League was holding a training class, a typing class, and a key punch class. And I was the first one to get into that one. And then I was hired by Pac Bell. And so there I had a full-time job and I could support myself, support my family. And then my husband and I got married. Her dad and I did get married. Um, and it was more of as I'm walking along doing all these things that because he was not adventurous, that uh, I did as a mom, as a wife, and all those things, the way I, fed my curiosity was I would love to go to seminars and love to go every chance I got. I would go to a seminar, to a workshop or something. And I just did that all along the way and not really any goal and what I was going to do with it. When it came time to be trained as a mediator, it was a volunteer process and I was selected to be trained to be a mediator. And, just a friend told me about it and I said, I'd like to do that. So that's how I, embarked upon the variety of things I've done in my life.
That's great. And
Mhm.
so the path of growth was
Mhm.
a natural choice.
Yes.
And what's in my mind at the most moment is this whole notion of expansion versus
Yes.
contraction, because I
Exactly.
imagine the little girl, and I know I keep going back to that, but
Mhm.
that had an impact. And the contraction that takes place then
Mhm.
stifles our growth. And you've managed to come out of that and become, I mean, my goodness, you're a wealth of knowledge. You're all
Well, and again, that's what I did. I used information, collected information, and I always figured that I could make a good decision. I could figure out what to do next. So that built an internal confidence. So you mentioned the little girl, she's still with me, of course, and that was critical in me getting her to trust that I am an adult now, and you don't have to show up and behave a certain way because that never leaves us. The emotions, once I started to um, learn how to manage my emotions and to feel them and to discuss, express, I had to others, I looked like I was really expanded, but I don't think I've been expanded until right now. I think it was leading up to true expansion. And that means that I embraced me. I learned to love myself. And that's where the expansion's coming in today. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love the way you describe that. That is just such a beautiful thing. And before we move on from that, it's striked me for a very long time. Of course, my psychotherapist background informs this, that
Mhm.
I see so many adults where the little person is running the show.
Absolutely.
It breaks my heart sometimes. And
Yeah.
in some respects, if we just learn to love ourselves and look after that little girl, that little boy, we
Mhm.
then would become more into our adultness. What do you think
Right.
about that whole notion?
I think it's accurate. I think it's what we're brought here to do. One of the things, learn to love ourselves because we are a gift. And I think it's the hardest thing anybody can ever do. I was okay not loving myself, you know, um, talking badly about myself. You messed up again. Okay, oh, I can't do that. Those kinds of things just kind of rolled off my tongue. At the same time, I'm telling you, you can do anything you want to do. You can be whatever you want to do, So it all went out and
Yeah,
nothing went
that yes,
in.
that's fascinating, isn't it? And
Mhm.
look, in some ways it's a lot easier, isn't it? Like
It
just
is.
because if I have to look in here,
Right, right.
it's scary, it's confronting,
Scary. It,
and
it hurts. It's painful.
it's very
You
painful.
know,
That's
yeah, things that, yeah, you learned along the way, but you understand. Well, I gained a lot of empathy for my parents because I know that their upbringing and living in Arkansas as their parents were sharecroppers, and my mom was a school teacher, and my dad was in the military. And he actually, once he got out, he had a disability. That's why he had to get the surgery later on in life. But he also went to school as a young man, so I relate to him. I think in when I was in his space, I was much freer, and my mother is more on the education side. I value that. I value because I went and got my bachelor's and my master's. However, I'm not. I'm an experiential person. And so my mom was more the academia part, and then she joined a sorority. So all of those things around, a high influence on education. Um, I respect education. However, I understand that you don't have to be educated to succeed. Education comes in different forms, and you don't have to be educated through books in a system like to succeed. Anyone can educate themselves on what it takes to live their life the best they can and succeed in that. And they don't have to have, doesn't mean you have diplomas or degrees or anything. You can if you choose, but it's a choice. It's not a requirement.
no, I like that, and that's absolutely true. I like the differentiation you're making there of the academic world versus the lived experience, I'm going to call it,
Yes,
experience
yes,
of the world.
absolutely.
And I would guess, because we've only met, here, I
Yeah.
imagine that that is probably what makes you a remarkable woman, to be able to bring those two
hmm
together to
Yeah.
who you are today. Is that a fair comment?
Thank you. Yes. It also makes me a rebel.
Yes. Yes.
I was a bit of a rebel, and so I was blatantly, because in the fierceness of folks who believed you had to have these things, I was just as fierce that you didn't have to. And so it allowed me to accept my lane, not be, I did get a degree or two. However, my daughter's academia. She's also down to earth and comfortable in her own skin. And I remember when I first heard that, and a teacher wrote that about her, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what that's like. I had
Yes.
no idea what that was.
Yes. And here's your daughter. I was going
Hmm
to say, I wonder how much you as a role model impacted that. And now that you've said that, it was almost
Yeah.
like the roles were flipped a bit.
Yes, yes. I considered myself her manager time-wise. So as she went to school, she excelled in school. She was on the debate team. She has her PhD now. Uh, and so in ministry. And so, my goal at that time was to manage her schedule. When you show to be very talented, even as a child, they want you to do everything. And I said, if you're going to add on something to your schedule, what are you going to remove? I was always the balancer, and that was a nice role for me with her. She was easy to raise in that regard, so.
And you had a son as well, correct? You had,
Yes,
sorry,
have a son.
that's
So I have two geniuses. They're on different ends of the spectrum. And she, in her PhD, you can see her genius more easily. Was diagnosed at age 16 with schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, and he's 45 now. He lives in a boarding care, and he's a genius as well. And they're both best. We're best. I'm best friends with both of them. I laugh with them. I mean, I'm blessed. You know, I'm blessed. God knew what He was doing when He put us together.
a work of art, in fact.
Yes, that worked out well.
What was that like? That's quite a young age to have that diagnosis. What was that like for you? Not to mention how it was for him,
Yeah,
but for you, what was that like as a mother?
that was a shift. That was a shift. When I talk about helping women live a life of joy, grace, and an unstoppable spirit, that's where the unstoppable spirit came in as I watched the grace intercede with his life and mine every step of the way to keep us safe. And one of the things I, have to add to the mix is I didn't feel safe. You see, when my dad died, my safety, I'm angry, I'm abandoned, so there's no safety. So, you know, that's what that's important to me to make sure we get back to a safe place for him. Now, this is, the diagnosis, it's one of um, well, some of them are most talked about. This is the least talked about it at that time. But I saw a commercial the other day, and it said it was for schizophrenia, if you suffer from schizophrenia. And it suggested a medication. Now, it didn't suggest the ones that I'm familiar with, but it warmed my heart to know that when he was diagnosed, it wasn't talked about at all.
No,
And
he
we
was
had
on
to go through,
television.
yeah, yes, and we had to go through that journey, and I talked about it. So what I did was I was a trainer for Skill Path. I was a speaker. I traveled, at my church. I shared it with everyone that I met. And I found out that it was the best kept secret in airports. I just opened the conversation, and every person said, "Oh, I got somebody. Oh, I know somebody. Oh, my mother and my brother are diagnosed." I'm like, "Well, okay, what's going on?" You know, this is not in the news. They're all
It's
telling me. Yeah, yeah. So when he said he just wanted to be normal, I was ready. I said, there is no normal, sweetie, because what you're going through, he'll give an example of something he's feeling. I felt the same way. I felt the same way. You know, we're human first. And so that shaped that whole experience, excuse me, that whole experience brought up my unstoppable spirit that said, no matter what, I'm going to use my life to help change something in this world. And I did with him. I know that for a fact.
it's quite a mantra, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Unstoppable spirit and
Yes.
feeling and what he was feeling. And, you know, when you think about it, I talked about right at the beginning of your wisdom about how wise you are.
Mhm.
And this is part of what you're bringing in your wisdom because you came from where people didn't talk about things. Everything was,
Yes.
probably in a lockbox, so to speak.
Right. Secret.
That's right. And
Mhm.
you've kind of let the cat out of the bag, really, by
Yes.
talking about it. But the beautiful thing that I know about that is that you then give other people permission to share their fears, their worries, their,
Yeah,
I know someone like it, it would have been, like a bee to the honey pot, I would think, when
it
people
was.
uh, your openness. And that's leadership right there, Patrice. That is leadership.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Thank
also
you.
ability, bring those together, and
Yes.
you've made your mark, really. Now that
Mhm.
you've written a book, tell us about your book. How did that come about?
So the book is titled Life Ain't Nice, So Get Over It.
I love the
Excuse me.
title. I love it.
Insights to move you from stuck to unstoppable. And the purpose was at that time, uh, I chronicled like the first part of my life through my son's diagnosis. And I went back to because at the time we're having a family reunion, and I was asked by my cousin to write a newsletter, an article in the newsletter about our family. And so it started out with me thinking about that. And what I did was went back to my grandparents who were sharecroppers, and they planted seeds in my mom and her family. And they were seeds of hard work, education, family love, um, truthfulness, and commitment to the church. And that was the pillars, I call them seeds that were passed down to them. And then my mom brought in seeds. My dad brought in seeds also, but I focused on my mom's family because that's who we were celebrating. And those seeds then passed down to us as children and nurtured us in some ways. And so I tied those seeds into how when the challenge came with my son and his illness, that's how the seeds came out and took effect in my life. And I carried them forward and they helped me get through what I had to get through with him. And then I can even bring it forward to today in my talking to women over 50 and asking them, what treasures are you sitting on? Because they're still seeds. We're sitting on treasures. I was sitting on my treasures because I didn't know what else to do with them. I didn't even know I had treasures. And so many of us as women are sitting, we've used them in so many areas for other people. We've run companies, facilitated everything. We've, run the household, did everything that we could and as far as expression, outward expression. However, when it came to the inward nuggets, the treasures on the inside, the things that are uncovered when we go through difficult situations, resilience, tenacity. These are seeds and treasures. And part of they have been passed down from our ancestors. So when you connect that to who you are today, it gives you I think it gives us a foundation that we need because then no matter what happens around us, we are sure of a strong foundation. And that's going to keep us upright every time. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Wow. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Such wonderful seeds with, I was just thinking there's another value, there's another value, there's another value, all the seeds, and the strength of it. And I love that being passed down. And do you think then that through generations that our values, in your case, we're talking seeds, which I actually rather love that.
Mhm.
Do you think they become stronger, or
Yes.
we then take on ones that we want and add it to that collection? How do you think it works?
So both, in both ways. They become stronger. And that's what I share in my talks. Then you add your own seeds out of that to become who you are individually, you know. And now it gives purpose. Now it says, okay, I'm here. And also, there's a part in there, I have a permission slip. Uh, you know, I created a form. In school, you had to get permission from the teacher to walk around or go leave the class. So it's giving themselves permission to uncover their treasure and to activate it, you know.
Lovely. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Absolutely love it. In my mind right now, I have this vision of you being quite focused, driven. This is where I want to go. You stayed the course. I think you mentioned something about staying on the lane, in the lane or something, but
Mhm.
What supports, what sort of support or influence? Who influenced you? Who supported you? Or was it exactly like the Lone Ranger?
It was more like the Lone Ranger. When I think about, of course, folks on television, Oprah and different, growing up, watching entertainment where people of color were on the television screen, because, that was about the year I was born, was the television was invented. And so, of course, there were influences there, but there was nothing that caught my attention to where I said, oh, this is what I want to be. And so I maneuvered. I just continued to maneuver and have adventures. You know,
Mm.
I still go to therapy. It's important because I knew I was entering a chapter of my life I hadn't been before, and I wanted guidance. And it's insurance, it gets paid for, so I'm going to take advantage of it. And so in that space, I actually took on a coach as a therapist because you can get it's our choice to get the information we need from the person we work with. We
Correct.
guide that conversation, the person doesn't guide us. They do, but we tell them what we need to have, and they create a platform that allows us to achieve that. And so that's how I look at things. I don't look at them as titles and what they're it's a way to achieve a goal. And so that was really important when I came into um, uh, where I am today. I've been around a minute or two or three, and so it's
Me too.
it's yeah, and so but it wasn't that long ago that I started doing the actual internal work on myself. So a lot of the foundation was on what I did with others, and I just, morphed it. I walked with it. When my son, was diagnosed, that role was I had to be at the table, because once that happens, you're diagnosed by a psychiatrist and the doctors, and then, he's had to go into, well, he needed to go, and we went into facilities and hospitals, and so there's all of these. Everybody had a title that was associated with what he had been dealt. I'll put it that way, because he wasn't suffering what he had been dealt. It was my job to make sure that he was getting the services and the help that he needed, that he was being recognized and heard at the same time. And so I had to put myself in the middle of that, and I didn't know how to do it at first. So I had to be vulnerable. I had to be humble and just say, to one of the social workers, that meeting that we had, everybody was talking, but I don't feel like I was heard at all. And then he said, oh, Mrs. Baker, yes, you're invited at every table. We want your input. And then I was where I wanted to be, at the table.
Mm.
That
That's
was the goal.
And you mentioned therapy. I've had a long-standing joke that I'll share with you, talking about therapy, having done lots
Yes.
of therapy. Uh,
Hmm.
People would say, I would say, have you ever done therapy? People say, no. And I'm like, what's that like? And they would look at me like, what? You know,
Exactly.
because to me, it was a fundamental thing that
Yes.
I needed to know me, and I'm someone who's
Absolutely.
very comfortable in my skin, but
Yes.
to this day, I still have a bit of humor about it because, what's that like? Not to
Exactly.
explore yourself,
Right.
not to look. And
Oh gosh.
I read
You know,
something that a real game changer for you was when you discovered that what you were doing for everyone else, you actually wanted for you. Can you
yes,
tell us more about that?
absolutely. I've always had this thought. At first, I thought my dad was going to come back magically somehow. So that was with me for a long time. And then when that went away, because I was in this like little fantasy about men. In fact, when my son was diagnosed, he was 16 and he was 6'1".
Oh, wow.
And so yeah, I'm 6 foot inside, but outside I'm 5'1". Okay. So and I looked up at him thinking, ooh, my issue is with men, and he looks like a man to me. So that was one of those things I had to navigate at the same time that I was being present in his life, making decisions about his diagnosis that were helpful to him, even though he didn't know it. It was quite a, yeah, it was quite a, I don't know if there's a word for it, but it was a navigational process, making all those things come together where one wouldn't cause him to be alarmed or alerted or get angry or think that I was against him, you know. And so when that happened, I didn't ask why. I just said, okay, what we're going to do next. So that was my mentality. What are you going to do next? And so, when you keep doing that, what are you going to do next? I'm not paying attention to, I didn't stop and, a thought about what it was. I knew it changed his life and mine. And, but I knew I just, what do I do? Because I knew I could do something to make a difference in his life. And I
That's
didn't know how it would affect my life. So,
I have something to offer about that. Are you okay to hear it?
mhm.
I think it's called unconditional love, Patrice.
Yes, yes, it is. Yes, it is. No matter what.
That's right. And I imagine if we move on from that, that for you to get what you want, then
Mm,
the inner exploration, discovery,
yeah.
curiousness about yourself.
Mhm.
What's changed since you started to meet your own needs?
The first thing I think that, eventually as we stay longer on this earth, those around us move on and do different things, right? So even though my son needed my help, he didn't need me emotionally because he was a young man growing up. My daughter had gone on to school. She has a daughter. And so now you find yourself alone going, okay, what do I work on now? No one left to fix.
That's right.
And then things began to happen and things began to come to my mind as, well, I thought I took care of that. No, you helped somebody else take care of that. You didn't take care of it for yourself. And that's how it began. Just little insights popped up. Oh, okay. I think I need to look at this differently. I think I need to deal with this. I think this is for me. And it took a while for me to get it. This is for me. And of course, my kids are my daughter particularly. I've been telling you, Mom, you're the one, you're the reason that we're doing. Okay, okay. I would always, just say, you know, if it wasn't for God, that would be my spiritual. If it wasn't for God. And she said, but you did it. I know, but so now I'm saying, yes, I did do it.
Yes, beautiful.
Yes. He brought me through, and my faith brings me through. But as I looked inward and at the strengths that I have, then I realized, there's a calling here. Because I'm you mentioned the word focus earlier, and if there's a greater word than focus, I'm there. Because what we need today is women to come together in a way where we can identify, and I can help with that, what treasure you're sitting on, help you do that. And then you get up and use it, and you use your treasure in the best way, and we all use our treasures. And then we affect a change, and change is needed so much. We're needed today, I believe. Our skills, the way we think is needed today. We're solution oriented and we open things up. And we've had children, we birth children, whether you birth them or not, that's not mandatory for being a mother or being someone who's, helped someone along the way. We have a giving nature, we uh we have a love thing inside of us that we're all searching for, to be loved. There's been written many songs about that. Well, I realized I wasn't loving myself. And what I found out, and oh, before I say that, I have to say this, I didn't want to speak to women at all. I've spoken to men and women, I've spoken to youth, middle school to high school. I do that and do it well. Didn't want to speak to women. I thought it'd be too complicated and too messy. And what I found out is that when you can see when we connect in our journeys as women and we begin to love the women in our lives, we love ourselves. It's connected. That was the answer. And I
Yeah.
was fighting it all my life. I was, staunchly rebelling. No. And yeah, that's what I found.
Yes, the I suddenly saw, I don't know what's happening today. I'm seeing lots of pictures, and I saw
Mm,
this kind of stoicness, you know.
yes, yes.
And for me, you touch a very personal string, if you like, for me, because I have
Mhm.
always believed to be fully available and present in your life. You must, it's a fundamental thing to me,
Yes,
must know yourself. You must
yes.
dig deep and discover who you are and what you bring.
Hmm.
And there are so many women out there that are disconnected from that.
Hmm.
This is just my look on things. I'm not saying
Oh, absolutely.
categorically this is how it is, but my experience is that there's so much disconnection. And I love what you're saying about that. I think that we are at a very crucial time where
Yes,
women really need to step up and lead from a women's perspective.
yes, absolutely.
The feminine, and I think the more that we nurture this,
Yes,
then the more that women will thrive.
absolutely. And things will turn around. And so as someone who's coming from a inside out perspective, because the work I do is an inside job, I understand fully why they don't, why women don't love themselves and why women don't do the work. So I go in with that understanding. Yeah, no, I know it's hard. I know it's in there, okay, for sure, but I know it's hard. I've been there, I understand, and it's important. And you deserve it. And you could say that 10 times if you want to unless they know that you understand where they're coming from and willing to meet them where they are, then they won't, they'll use that as an excuse. Well, you're not the right person, or I can't do it. And believe me, I'm not for everybody, okay? So, but the my understanding of it is that I cannot, unless I walk alongside a person and get to know them a little bit, I can't tell them what to do or go. I can't tell them what to do anyway, but I can't become a trusted guide in their lives without doing that. And that's what I hope to become in my journey.
I imagine you're already doing that, Patrice.
Ah, well, thank you. I work at it.
Well, I think I would think that it would be hugely
Mm,
beneficial to be working with you, connected with you. Gosh,
yes.
I feel really nourished by our conversation today. You have brought a lot of, certainly, you know, when I get on the soapbox, some of those topics are what you're raising today and
Yes.
what we need more conversations about, the challenge with mental health issues, the challenge with anger,
Mhm,
abandonment,
mhm.
digging deeper into ourselves, how scary that can be. All of these you have brought to the table, and I love that. And I know our audience is going to love it. Just to finish off for today,
Mhm.
is there one message that you could give to our audience today that you're deeply passionate about?
Yes. Open your mind, be curious. I thought I had an open mind because I was open to learning things, and I realized I didn't really have an open mind. Uh, Give yourself grace, open your mind, and open your heart to yourself. Open your heart to yourself. take baby steps. It may take a while, but just the thought of loving yourself and opening your heart, use it as a mantra, the one thing is looking in the mirror, many of us don't do that. And so talk to yourself when it's okay, when you can do that, and ease up on it, peek up.
Oh, yeah, that's
Exactly. And
oh,
give yourself compassion, yeah.
great words of wisdom. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, your energy, your
Thank
smile,
you. Thank you.
and thanks for being here today.
You're very welcome. I thank you as well.
Thank you for joining us on the richness of our lives. If today's conversation stirred something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Connect with me on social media, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are ready to step into your own bold journey, join our vibrant Cheer Squad. We meet weekly for coaching and connection. Until next time, continue to embrace the richness of your life. I'm Mary Scott, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.